Okay, the time has come to say fair is fair, to pay the rent, to pay our share. Has anyone heard that song? Am I alone? Please, someone tell me if you've heard that song. For a character that only appeared in 2 episodes, the Clock King stands out in the memory of many fans of this series, most likely because he was one of the oddest villains to get his own episode. Seeing as how he's a relatively obscure character in the comics and that the creators of this episode made changes to him, it makes sense to provide background on the Clock King at the beginning. The Clock King is an efficiency expert appropriately named Temple Fugit, who is tightly wound and runs his day with an extremely precise schedule. A $20 million lawsuit was put against his company, so he had to win an appeal. With the best of intentions, Mayor Hill, back when he was just a lawyer, tells Fugit that he should loosen up and run without a schedule for a day so he would not look so suspicious in court. Fugit takes Hill's advice and goes to the park for his coffee break at 3:15 rather than his usual 3 o'clock as per Hill's advice. At the park, Fugit is the victim of an incredible amount of bad luck when his court papers are sent flying, causing him to be late to the court hearing and lose the appeal, which ruins his company. Fugit snaps as the audience can see by his insane scream directly at the camera after the final straw when the judge tells him that he should be on time for a change. The episode then cuts to 7 years later where Mayor Hill is campaigning for re-election and Fugit puts into effect his plan for revenge on Hill, who he irrationally blames for being late to court on that fateful day. This is where Batman enters the story, and unlike other episodes that explain the villain's origin, the story mostly follows Batman's perspective, which is good because Batman is as caught off guard as the audience with Fugit's motif. I really like the moment during their first encounter when Fugit tells him that the 9:15 train always runs 6 minutes early and surprises Batman by jumping off the building to land on the top of the train right on time. This episode was really creative with how dangerous a person could be if they kept a precise track of time for many things, not the least of which how much time it takes Batman to throw a punch. Elaborating further on the Clock King himself, it seems that many of Batman's villains represent an obsession, in this case punctuality and timing. Two-Face has an obsession with chance, Riddler's obsessed with proving his intellect, Mr. Freeze is obsessed with curing his wife, and Joker is obsessed with Batman himself. The reason this motivation works well compared with Batman is because he also has an obsession, stopping crime and solving mysteries, which allows Batman to be a noble character but makes him very similar to his adversaries at the same time. This idea is not used all that much within this particular story, but it is interesting that this more obscure villain comes from the same tradition as many of Batman's most famous villains. Anyways, Fugit does much to humiliate Mayor Hill, including embarrassing graffiti on his re-election posters, but more seriously causing 2 trains in the opening for the city's first automated subway system to crash. Batman, with a good amount of assistance from Alfred, uses detective work to track down Fugit and figure out how he commits his crimes. Speaking of Alfred, as per usual, he gets some of the funnier moments of the episode, such as when Batman tells him to wait in an alley, and Alfred sarcastically retorts by saying it's one of the finest alleys in Gotham City, while staring at a rat in front of him. However, Alfred does almost half the detective work in this episode, which is a major plus. The moment that really sells Batman and Alfred as partners is when Alfred finds that a small blackout was used to disable the locks of a Gotham bank, and Batman specifically says the time locks, and both at the same time say, Fugit. It's always cool to see when 2 intelligent characters can keep up with each other, and it's what makes Alfred such a great supporting character. This scene leads to Batman investigating the bank, which turns out to be a trap to be locked inside the bank vault with no oxygen and a pressure-sensitive bomb which will explode anyway in minutes. It also impresses the viewer that such a minor villain can make such a lethal death trap for someone as competent as Batman. What's even more impressive, however, is Batman's ingenuity when he figures out a way to blow the vault by using the filling of a tape recorder the Clock King left behind to explain Batman's trap, and devising a makeshift pulley system to get the bomb close enough to the vault without touching it. The intensity, of course, is high because Batman has only a certain amount of time to get out before it runs out of oxygen. Predictably, Batman pulls himself together enough to shoot a batarang at the bomb, but in this instance, Batman's escape felt earned. Even though I often forget about this, Batman the Animated Series puts plenty of focus on how much of a great escape artist Batman is, especially in the episodes Zatanna and Riddler's Reform. By the end, a good chunk of this episode is composed of action sequences, but that's fine because it's well handled and there's plenty of great characterization. The final battle is fittingly in the clock tower, now that Fugit has managed to kidnap Mayor Hill. The first time watching this, I had no idea that the specific time that Hill told Fugit to take his coffee break was a setup that would be paid off at the end when Fugit ties Mayor Hill to the clock, whose hands will come together at that precise time and crush Hill in another pretty ingenious death trap. I remember watching this one on TV probably during Toonami a long time ago, before getting the first box set of the series. I just caught it on while it was during the final battle. And I remember thinking it was so moody with the lightning and the fight inside the cogs of the clock tower. This was before I had seen much Batman, so this fight sequence had me especially mesmerized, and I remember wanting to see more really badly, but the time block ended, and I was almost never able to catch Batman the Animated Series on Toonami. Looking at it now, this action sequence was nothing particularly special in terms of the rest of the series, but it was still as mesmerizing as it was back then, especially seeing how a normal guy like Fugit can manage in a fistfight with Batman. The episode ends with the inside of the tower collapsing and Batman saving Mayor Hill from falling to his death. Fugit's body isn't found in the wreckage, and Batman appropriately caps off the episode by saying it's only a matter of time before they face the Clock King again. Before moving on to other aspects of this episode, there's a fantastic line where Fugit sums up his obsession with punctuality during the final battle when Batman tells him that Hill committed no crime against him. The Clock King responds with, "He did worse. He made me late!" The animation for this one is okay, but the drawing on the characters could be much better. Batman himself best exemplifies this, because when he's in motion, it's consistent, but he has strange expressions here and there. I do really like the Clock King's design, especially with how simple it is. He looks almost exactly the same in the scene 7 years ago, but he has the right touch of supervillain with the glasses that have clock hands. As said before, the action sequences are well staged, and there was a good focusing effect when Batman was trying to hit the bomb while running out of oxygen. Probably the part where the animation looks best is Mayor Hill's reaction when he sees the clock hands have stopped moving. His face was nicely detailed, and a good touch was how his glasses were falling off his face. There's a cool reference I want to mention. Part of the address that Batman found for Fugit's neighborhood has the name Breyfogle, which could mean Norm Breyfogle, a classic Batman artist who worked with writer Alan Grant for a while in Detective Comics, but on the address it's misspelled with an A instead of an E. Just wanted to mention that because I really like Norm Breyfogle's work on Batman. He is a great artist. But I'm not sure if that reference was intentional. Anyway, the Clock King is voiced by Alan Rackins, and he makes the dialogue leap off the page from the script. I'm impressed that he reprised his role quite a bit later for an episode of Justice League Unlimited, Task Force X. Fun fact, he played Norman Osborn in The Spectacular Spider-Man. It seems that Alan Rackins has quite a bit of range because the two characters sound almost nothing alike. The rest of the regular cast provides performances that are up to par with the rest of the series. Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in particular is lots of fun to hear. The music is also competent, integrating a tick-tock sound with the orchestral score. That sounds like the obvious thing to do in an episode like this, but it does sound very good and is great for playing up the madness of the Clock King himself. If I had to think of any real complaints with this episode, is that even after alerting the public that the Clock King was responsible for some of the problems within the city and the crash in the subway, it's still doubtful that many would vote to re-elect Mayor Hill. It's a small nitpick, but worth mentioning. That being said, The Clock King is an extremely solid episode. If you're watching Batman the Animated Series for the first time, this episode doesn't need to be at the top of your list of episodes to watch, but if you're planning on marathoning through a bunch of episodes, then this would be wise to include. This episode gives us a unique and well-realized villain, so I rate The Clock King a 4 out of 5, though a very enthusiastic 4, just not quite enough for 4.5, because it was very good, but it lacked... didn't really lack anything. It's just, I've seen better episodes in this series, but overall, very decent episode. Thanks as always for tuning in, guys. I have to give a shout out again to my subscribers because the channel has now reached over 500. The count right now, I believe, is at 508. It's unbelievable that only 4 reviews ago with the Feet of Clay review, it was a little over 400. My deepest gratitude to all of you guys for this amazing growth of the channel. Now that it's summer, reviews should be coming more regularly, but probably not always once a week. So next review is for a personal favorite of mine, Appointment in Crime Alley. Hope to see you guys there. And I'm going to try to finish this last disc of the first box set as quickly as possible. Thanks for your time, and have a nice day.